Hello, welcome to Local Chats. I'm Lewis Adams and I'm here with Hazel Edwards. Hello, how are you?
I'm pleased to chat with another writer from Bendigo.
For those 3 or 4 people that don't know who you are, would you like to explain a bit about your backstory?
I'm here for the Bendigo Festival and I'm speaking on a couple of perhaps my lesser known books, F2M The Boy Within, which is a co-written young adult novel about transitioning gender. So that's a little bit different from the one I'm doing tomorrow, which is the authorpreneurship, the business of creativity. But probably I'm better known as the author of There's a Hippopotamus on Our Roof Eating Cake, which is, I think, 35 this year. It might be 36, getting close anyway.
Yeah, so some anniversaries have happened for this.
Yes, it's been a long time. We actually still live in the same house where the roof leaked and gave my then 4-year-old son the idea that there was a hippo on the roof. So we've been there for a long time, so I know roughly the dates. But these days he writes his own books.
Oh, that's good. You actually worked on a book with him.
Yeah, 2 books. He is more of an adventurer than his mother, and he cycled solo from Ireland to Istanbul, and he wrote a book about that, and also the Appalachian Trail called Trail Magic. Trail Magic is the kindnesses that strangers give to travellers, and in a sense this book is passing that on. So I have to say he did all the walking, I helped with the writing, so it was a different kind of collaboration.
All right, now you've actually collaborated with a lot of different other authors over the years.
Yes, I find collaboration for a long-term author is a way of extending your education because you learn in a new field. I did a book on event management with a very experienced event manager for Simply Events. I learned a lot in the process. I learned what not to do too. I've co-written with psychologists like Dr. Helen McGrath. We've done a number of books together on difficult personalities and friends and so on. And there it's a case of a psychologist having expertise on one sort of language and me using the language to make it more accessible for the general reader. Generally, it's a mutual exchange. It's equal but different often with the collaboration. And it also overcomes procrastination. I call it the cappuccino approach. We meet for a coffee and you feel obliged to finish your share before you meet them again.
It's amazing how much work you get done if someone else is counting on it.
Yes, but I think it's also good to have a mixed portfolio where perhaps one is non-fiction, another one is a collaboration of some kind, maybe another one is fiction. At the moment, the other collaboration, which is a little bit different that I have, is with a junior chapter book called Hijabi Girl, and I'm writing that with Erskine, who's a Muslim librarian.
Yep.
And so that's been an example of learning of another culture and getting the language and everything right. That'll be out towards the end of the year. And that's a different type of collaboration because she has the librarian expertise and the cultural expertise, and I've been contributing the shaping of the story.
Do you find that your previous collaborations help inform your experience of more recent ones?
Yes, I always make sure we have a letter of agreement. Even if I'm doing it with my son, he doesn't worry too much about it, but I do have a legal letter of agreement because circumstances can change. Generally, the problems that arise in partnerships are when something is highly successful, not when it falls by the wayside. That doesn't matter so much, but it is just wise to do that. Yeah, I do enjoy continuing to learn in that way. I suppose a different sort of collaboration I've had also has been a digital one where 5 years ago my daughter decided to make me over and update me digitally with a self-managed website. I'd always had a website, but this one was to be self-managed and to have an online bookstore. Now that's been a massive change for me, but it's indicative of the way in which people writing differently and publishing differently these days too.
I understand you had to learn a fair bit about technology when you were working on the book that you've been talking about this weekend at the Bendigo Writers Festival. F2M, which is another collaboration.
Yes, the F2M The Boy Within with Ryan Kennedy. Ryan, apart from being an F2M himself, that's a female to male who has transitioned, is actually a very experienced IT professional, which is immensely valuable when you're collaborating on a book. So not only did he teach me a number of things, he could also fix things up when I made a mess of tweets or other issues. He made a book trailer, and I hadn't had a book trailer before. He also arranged a launch as a web chat between the two countries, New Zealand and Australia, because he lives in New Zealand. So he's sort of upgraded my technological skills somewhat. And then, of course, he put the F2M on YouTube. And for me, that one was a very big step forward. I know you're familiar with use of YouTube, but that's a new area for me, because I don't think in pictures, I actually think in abstract. And that's why I need someone who's strongly visual to work with.
You mentioned the book launch that you appeared at visually across from Australia. Do you want to talk about that, like a book launch that you were at that you weren't at?
Yes, it was very strange. This was a case, well, there were two writers, two countries, two generations, and there were actually two book launches, because we had one in Melbourne, which was a conventional book launch in a library, and then we had this one in New Zealand in the bookshop itself, but I was present as on Skype, projected onto the wall as a web chat. And the difficulty for me was that this audience there, which was a very, this particular bookshop is an extremely good bookshop, but they had invited a large group from the queer community, and the place was buzzing. It was really, well, what I could see from my camera view and the noise view, it was really a highly successful book launch with people supporting the fact that, but the difficulty for me was I didn't know who was supposedly standing either side of me in real life, but on the wall, and I didn't know whether they were male or female from the voices. So it was difficult for me because I didn't know who my co-presenters were. But it was one of those launches which, you know, had a really good vibe. And he sat there for ages signing books, and they left me up on the wall, and they all went off and had a drink. So I think next time we do one of those, I'll say there's a definite ending time to this, and I'll have a drink my end.
How do you find some of your collaborators aren't necessarily authors themselves in their day-to-day life? How do you find they like the experience of releasing a book?
I think that you have to discuss in the beginning which skills you're bringing to the project, and also agree on who will defer on particular issues. For example, with Ryan on F2M, I deferred to him on everything to do with the cultural issues, and particularly the language. He deferred to me on the business aspects. And it's different for each collaboration, but I think you must have that discussion early on. What sometimes happens is that one of the benefits is that you've got two different groups of contacts once the book comes out to publicise it too, but it may be that one of the co-writers is shy and prefers for the second one to do the media. That happens.
F2M provoked quite an interesting reaction from across the board. It was banned in part of Queensland, I believe.
It was put on the ban shelf in one particular library, which probably better remain nameless, in a remote region. It was thrown in the bin by one English teacher at a literary festival.
This was in front of you, wasn't it?
But it was also acclaimed, and with gratitude, with a lot of fan mail and a lot of very heart-provoking reviews, many of which are on my website. What we've tried to do is to put all the links in the one place. So on my website, hazeledwards.com, I'll get that in as an ad.
There should be a link below.
Yeah, it has a page for each title, and for the F2M one, which also links to Ryan's page and to the YouTube clip and pretty much everything else. I try and keep it all in the one place, mainly because I'm not very good at moving it around.
Let's move to the hippopotamus in the room, and another work that you are quite popular for, which was inspired by your son, as you said.
That's been a book which we always knew it was good, and I say we because everybody owns that book, not me. It's principally the readers who own it, but what I'm finding now is that it's down to almost a third generation now. It's not just my mum used to read that, it's my grandma used to read that. My grandson my younger grandson is 5, and at his preschool, he took it along to, my grandma wrote that book, and he expects that every book they read at kinder should be written by grandma. So the teacher says, this one wasn't written by grandma, or this one, but the hippo, he just accepts that that's what you do. But I write a story for each of my grandchildren each birthday. So I've written Lost and Found for him. We're playing hide and seek. Various ones. The 16-year-old is no longer interested. He prefers Matthew Riley.
Oh, yes. Well, my partner was telling me, I didn't realise just earlier today, that she actually has hippopotamus memorised. She can
really?
recite it, yeah.
I tell you what, there are a few other people can do that too, because I don't read it a lot, but I was reading it somewhere, and there's a little girl out the front, and I didn't realise till afterwards she was mouthing every word, and she was dressed in the colours of the child in the book. It's been a beautiful book to be associated with, and quite poignant for some. One of the hippo titles is about going to hospital, and because they're all about reassurance of some kind, of having a large friend who's got the answers. And there have been some very sick children who found that quite comforting, that book. That's a positive thing to have too.
How's your experience been meeting young fans of the book? Because a lot of other children's authors that I've spoken with, they've just enjoyed just meeting the kids that love their work.
I think being author is different from the character. What happens is the children relate to the book and the character rather than the author.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that, not a problem, because I do honestly believe that the author may create originally, but the reader recreates afterwards, and it's between the clues in the positioning of the words, the positioning of the illustrations, that makes it, in a sense, a new story. So what I find is that quite often a young reader will add another dimension to the story. They'll say things, there's one about a new baby in a family, and I was very careful not to use any pronouns nor any names, but there's one that says something about the baby's name, and it's just right. Now, I meant that I wasn't going to give the baby a name, but one little reader said, oh, well, the baby's called Just Right. Well, you can't say the baby isn't called Just Right, because in her mind, it is, and that's fine. So often there are layers that you hadn't intended, and that's what enriches the book, and it's a great pleasure. But I have this memoir coming out, and I had a bit of a dilemma because I didn't want to overemphasize the hippo books at the expense of, because a lot of people don't know of the other sorts of books that I do. And so eventually I settled on Not Just a Piece of Cake as the title, being an author, that's the eventual title. I've actually pitched the memoir at adult readers rather than children, although it does contain 100 of the not embarrassing moments with the hippo, but anecdotes to do with the hippo, some of which I've spoken about before, like being waved down by the police breathalyzer squad because I had a large stuffed hippo in my front seat. And I hadn't been drinking, and he saw the hippo and said, drive on, madam. I've got lots of those sorts of things in there, but it's got a lot more in there about the challenges of creativity and how you manage to write long-term with also having a family, sort of time and energy management, not only about the hippo.
Do you have any actual advice for people who might be interested in writing or are writing, but they've also got other commitments like family and bills to pay? Which
is the status quo. Well, I get asked that question quite a lot. So what I did was I put a page up on my website called Aspiring Writers. And under there, I put lots and lots of hints, lots and lots of links to really useful places. And more recently, I've added a subsection page, I don't know what the technical term for it is, but for first-timers. And there are hints there, and I put up 3 sample texts for a picture book so that they can have a go themselves, because I often find that those tackling picture books have not taken on board the fact you have to be very succinct. I'm sure that would be helpful. And I put one up there called The Upside Down Insect with No Name Tag, which was really written originally with asylum seeker children in mind.
Okay.
So that's my political involvement, and that people might like to have a go at illustrating that one because there's advice there on how you do it.
Something I learned today, apparently your fans have a nickname.
Oh yes. Well, it's not fans as such. It's people whose writing I've mentored. They call themselves the Hazelnuts, and that seems to be a growing category. But what I liked was they chose that themselves.
Yep.
One of my illustrators friends said to me, "They're filberts, Hazel." I said, "What's a filbert?" A filbert is a cultured hazelnut.
I like that. Thank you, Hazel, for coming on my show with me.
Pleasure.
And this has been another episode of Local Chats. Of course, you can go to the website www.thenewlocal.net. You can send me an email, thenewlocal@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter @thenewlocal. And of course, we've got a Patreon now, which there'll be a link to just underneath there. Thank you. Bye.